Welcome into the DNVR Rockies podcast, brought to you by Strava Craft Coffee. Remember to use that promo code DNVR20 because you'll save 20% off your entire purchase of that CBD-infused, deliciously rich, and potentially life-altering Strava Craft Coffee. I am your host, Drew Creasman. I am the managing editor of DNVR Rockies. With me, as always, is beat writer Patrick Lyons, and we are going to have some fun on this one. There are a few things in life that I love more than awards for no particular reason. I've never been able to figure out exactly what that is.
I think Drew's Wi-Fi may be cutting out just a little bit. So to possibly recapture some of what our good friend here was saying is that awards are always a fun time at the end of every season or every calendar or any kind of period of time that is demarcated by the end of a series or a period of time. And the Colorado Rockies maybe don't deserve any awards other than a participation trophy, but they, did have some interesting highlights throughout the year. And if we're talking about the best, we're not going to talk about the worst. We'll do that all off season. But if we're going to talk about the best of the best, that is just who is better than somebody else. It's not the best in the world, but on this team, where there's 30 guys or the 41 that ended up making an appearance for the Colorado Rockies, there is a best among them in a lot of different categories and in a lot of different ways. Why do you love awards so much? You deserve the award for guy who loves awards so much. That's
Patrick. I got so excited I apparently knocked out my internet there for a second. But I don't know. I think it's because we watched the shows a lot. When I was a kid, we always watched movies at dinner. That's what I did. When we would gather around, we would have dinner, we'd watch a movie, and Dad would just grab a movie and whatever. That's what we would do. And then at the end of the year, we'd watch the big award show about all the movies, and we'd root for our favorites, and we'd talk about movies were always things we talked about a lot. And then people know I got really into video games when I was a kid, and you do this at the end of the year for video games too. I love the video game awards. Let's get together and talk about which ones were our favorite and why. And I actually think it largely has to do, now that you're asking me to peel back the onion on myself a little bit here. Why do I have a podcast? Why am I a Rockies analyst, whatever you want to call it now? Because I love being introspective about things. It's not enough for me to just watch the game of baseball. I've got to watch it, and I've got to talk to you about it. I got to send you text messages. I got to research it, and I got to go talk about publicly, and then I got to write something about it. And so it's not enough for me to watch a movie. I'm going to watch a movie, and then I want to talk to other people about it. I want to find out their opinions. I want to find out what the experts in the field think are the best movies or the best albums of the year, though the Grammys really bother me. But I still watch them. I still watch the damn Grammys because I always find it fascinating to see, even as a culture, as a people, what we come together to celebrate and decide, is worthy of celebration, of award, of honor. And I think it's always really interesting. So I'm excited to get to do some of that today.
And it gives context.
Silly.
Yeah. And it gives context to some things too, where again, you might see a movie on its own and go, that was really good. I don't know if it'll be the best this year. And you see the rest of the different options and go, actually, you know what? Maybe in a different year, that wouldn't have been the case. Like, I think, Goodfellas didn't win the Oscar for best film back in, I think it was 92. I think that was Driving Miss Daisy. I don't know why I know this. But anyway, there are those years where you look and you say like, oh my gosh, this film in another year would have won hands down. And you go, Green Book? What? Okay, whatever.
Right. Totally. And some years and most years you would think MVP of the Rockies, that's Nolan Arenado. Why would you have any other question? And here we are. And spoilers for that one. not gonna be Nolan Arenado.
This is a green book year for the Colorado Rockies. This is a year where you look and go, all right, I guess this is what we decided was the best film that was made amongst our choices.
Crash is the worst Academy Award-winning film of all time by a landslide.
I know a couple people that have debated whether that was a great movie or if that was a movie for stupid people. As far as obviously we know what's happening here. And it's funny because I do agree with that idea.
The least subtle film I've ever seen in my entire life.
Yeah, I would agree. But I did really enjoy it at the time. I'd be curious if I had ever, if I'd seen it when I was older, if I would have been able to kind of spot how obvious so much of it was. But yes. But that being said, we're gonna go ahead and dive in, give away some awards, and we want to know what awards you want to see. What fun things? And some of you have chimed in already here on our YouTube Live. You're doing it on Facebook. You're doing it on our Twitter, and you've commented and come up with some great stuff. But we'll hit you with a little boilerplate right now. The first award we'll give away for the 2020 Rockies is MVP, Most Valuable Player. Drew, go ahead and we both have ballots, so we could have two players getting awards here for you. Who is it this year?
This was a tough one. There wasn't a slam dunk case. There was a lot of different ways. I thought about going with this one. I ended up landing on something I almost never do. I went with a pitcher for the MVP. It's got to be Kyle Freeland. Because I was between I don't want to say too much. We'll see which way yours goes. But in my estimation, despite the 2 or 3, and again, this is where you get into the argument about value and where does value come from. And when you really take the 3 starts that Freeland had that were just terrible, and he was out of there, by the 3rd inning, and one that came in the very last game of the season when all of the emotion of the year has just been out of these guys. Beyond those, he was absolutely stellar for his team. He was a leader for this team when very few other people have been able to claim that. And then he was also excellent in terms of, actually pitching and stuff, those other things that you need to do. So I'm generally against giving MVP to a pitcher. And that doesn't necessarily mean that he's your Cy Young either, because an MVP is a different thing. And I think for this club, the most valuable commodity they could have versus not have was Kyle Freeland on that mound.
Okay, well, the votes are in. And for the 2020 Colorado Rockies, the winner is Trevor Story. Is there MVP? Just by traditional standards of wins above replacement, according to FanGraphs, which I have slowly but surely come around to favoring over Baseball Reference. You look at a guy right there in the middle of the lineup, especially as you said, Nolan Arenado is always the slam dunk winner. It's like, Quentin Tarantino, if that's one of his years where he comes out with a movie, hey, you're going to get best screenplay. You're going to get best director. You're going to get some of those other, major awards. That's there. He's going to be in the running. Nolan Arenado is going to be in the running. And I think with him kind of stepping aside and having the season that he did, the shortened season that he did, Trevor Story was still right there, still reliable in the middle of a lineup where without him, man, think about how much worse that would have been. So he batted 2nd, 3rd. I think even on the final day of the season, he batted cleanup. And so what he was able to do, going almost having a 40-40 season, had those 15 stolen bases, I think 11 home runs. So came very close to doing some big things. And maybe next year we'll really get to see that flourish over a 162 game season. And this pick will look that much more obvious or defensible, if you will. But Freeland, Trevor Story, they are our 2 MVPs for the season.
I think that's right.
Well, you teased it when you said, okay, well, we've got Kyle Kyle Freeland as the MVP, but not necessarily the Cy Young Award winner. So let's go ahead and give that one out. The 2020 Rockies Cy Young Award winner. Does Drew go with Kyle Freeland? Again, if he was the MVP, it would have to be the Cy Young Award. Who is it, Drew?
No, it's going to have to be Antonio Senzatela, because by the numbers, he was the best pitcher for the Colorado Rockies. I don't have to make those caveats about, well, if you take this game out and this game out. And I do think that pitching, as much as it is an over the course of the marathon thing as well, it is also very much a thing of that day. And because we've seen it so many times, one bad day can lose you a game, and 3 bad days from Kyle Freeland lost the Rockies 3 games because he couldn't go. At no point this season, in no starts, did Antonio Senzatela lose the game for the Colorado Rockies ever. And that's your Cy Young in my book.
Yeah, can't really argue with that. I have somewhat of a split vote, 50-50. So the fact that you went Antonio Senzatela is that tiebreaker. So I agree. It would be Antonio Senzatela, not just for what he was able to do to step forward, but having a couple dominant outings and really, solidifying the middle part of the rotation, which, in many ways has just as much value as the front of the rotation. Germán Marquez was probably just as good across the board, especially if you subtract that one start at home where, go back and listen to that podcast. Drew, you were all over it saying, man, Buddy was letting him know, no, you got to get out of this jam, dude. Yeah. We're not going to the bullpen and saving you. So you're going to suffer through it. And you're going to suffer through that 6th earned run, the 7th, the 8th, the 9th, and ultimately what was 10 earned run in his 5 innings pitched. So that was a horrible outing where you subtract that, you go and look at Marquez's season and say, wow, that was on par with some of the better ones in the National League. But I agree. I think the Cy Young Award for this year's team was, of course, Antonio Senzatela. Next up, the next logical award would have to go to the top rookie for the 2020 Rockies. One of the main
overflowing with them.
Very true. There were a lot. The top 20 Rockies rookie. For me, I'll go first. It was Josh Fuentes.
Yeah.
Certainly not the guy that any of us had money on. I think Sam Hilliard going into the season was the guy that you say, even in a limited role as a 4th outfielder, he's more likely to step up and produce, still hit 6 home runs. So, I mean, he pretty much lapped the entire field of rookie candidates there and some of the newer acquisitions. But Fuentes was just the most consistent. You could even have gone out and said, you know what, I'm gonna go for kind of a long shot and say Ryan Rollison, because if this kid gets called up, man, he could be incredibly impactful, almost have somewhat of a season like we saw Devin Williams have for the Milwaukee Brewers, where he wasn't the closer. He was just the 8th inning man before Josh Hader and the Brewers. And Devin Williams is going to get a lot of Rookie of the Year votes for being an 8th inning guy. Ryan Rollison could have been that for this team, but yet the kid who was undrafted out of Southern California, Missouri Baptist University, Josh Fuentes really made his mark, solidified himself as the 2020 starting first baseman for the team. So that's why he's my Rookie of the Year on this club.
Yeah, this one's pretty runaway. I think this is the clearest one so far, with apologies to Jose Mujica and Antonio Santos and some guys who had nice. Well, I was going to say had nice debuts. They didn't. It's nice that they got to make their debut.
They had debuts.
They had debuts.
Tommy Doyle
debuted. Those guys, all those things happened. But no, it's pretty easily Fuentes there.
Excellent, and we'll go ahead and round it out with the typical awards, the 4 awards that are given out. You got and this is, we did in reverse order of how we're going to see it, this off season. Right. MVP, Cy Young Award, Rookie of the Year Award, and then our last one, but it will be the first one, is the 2020 Rockies Manager of the Year. Drew, I think we are unanimous in selecting Harry Ralston.
It's going to have to be Bud
Black as the Manager of the Year.
Way to go. Congratulations. So far, he's won it every year he's been in Colorado.
This is true.
Clean sweep.
This is very true. Yeah, we salute you, Bud Black.
Though remember, Mike Redmond managed, 2 games last year after Buddy got thrown out and did 1 or 2 post-game press conferences with us down in that room, which feels like 5 years ago, back when we were allowed to see people in real life. So Mike Redmond was technically in the running there.
Last year, yes.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, Buddy didn't get thrown out of any games this year. There weren't. I had been meaning to go and look to see if anyone had been ejected. Do you remember any best ejection of 2020? I know Matt Kemp came close a few times. Matt Kemp came close a few times, but there might not have been a single ejection.
I guess than the Joe Kelly stuff at the beginning of the year and that whole kerfuffle, but it's certainly not just guy running out there yelling and getting tossed. That didn't happen this year.
Nope. Desmond got chucked last year. Ryan McMahon, I know there are a couple other guys, but they were very well behaved.
Very well behaved boys this year.
On the field as far as ejections go, and in the clubhouse and off the field as far as the pandemic is concerned. So they definitely win an award for that, I think, for sure.
For being good boys.
For being good boys. That's it. All right. If we want to do another one, we can go ahead and let's tackle best reliever of the year. So we, of course, the Cy Young Award usually ends up going to a starting pitcher. So we'll go ahead and not bother with talking about the best starting pitcher because we did that. So let's go top 2020 Rockies reliever of the year.
Yeah, kind of a 2-man race here, right? And I think you've got to tip your cap to the guy who had the tougher and more important job between Almonte and Daniel Bard, and that was the closer, the 36-year-old who was a coach last year, and it's Daniel Bard. He was the Rockies' best reliever in 2020, almost by default, but that shouldn't take away from the heat that he was bringing in some of the big moments, especially early on when they were still in it. And he had the winning and tying runs out there on base and would just muscle a 98 or 99 mile an hour heater by a good hitter. And you're like, this guy is back in the game of baseball. So that was pretty amazing. He also wins, I guess, comeback player of the year for the Rockies as well, right? He might actually win comeback player of the year
in MLB. Yeah. It would have been Freeland. Had Bard not been able to sustain it, for the entirety of the year. But you're right. He certainly would have been that guy. I would actually go with Yency Almonte, in earlier this week, released an article. Go ahead and check that out if you are a subscriber at the DNVR.com. And I did give the nod to Yency Almonte, kind of looked at it from the aspect of, if you don't have a bridge to the closer, then you don't have very many wins. So I think Almonte did a good job in those games where he came in and you said, hey, you know what? We got through the 7th inning. We have a chance of winning this ball game. And Almonte was a huge piece of that. Again, you could have Mariano Rivera in your bullpen in the 9th, but if you never have the opportunity to get to him.
Right.
So in that case, I would say Mariano Rivera is better than Yency Almonte. But on this team, on this year, you needed Yency Almonte maybe a little bit more than you needed Mariano Rivera.
Right,
as strange as that seems.
Totally. No, actually, that's a phenomenal argument. And you're absolutely right, because we literally saw that several times throughout the year where, it's a 1-run game or it's a tie game late and the Rockies never end up getting to involve Daniel Bard in the game at all. And you're of no value to your team if you don't play. And Yency Almonte going out there in the 7th inning and keeping him in a game for Jairo Diaz or Carlos Estevez to blow it in the 8th, or these other ways around, however it may have gone, he was at least a value to them in that game. So I buy that argument in full. That's quality.
Absolutely. Let's take one from Twitter. Our buddy Tim Bricker. He wants to know of the 2020 Rockies, best facial hair.
Okay. Okay.
Now, for
So
me,
go. I
it would
mean,
be me. No, I'm just kidding. No, of players on the field, I mean, we know what the chalk is. He always has great hair, but I'm actually going to go away from that because this gentleman has some unique facial hair, and it was just, I don't know, it just strikes me the right way. So it might be a shock, but I'm actually going to give this award to Kevin Pillar.
oh, okay. Okay.
Now, I don't know if he straightens his facial hair, which might be the case, or he just has naturally a straight beard. But if you notice, it really just like comes
Yeah. Like
straight down,
straight out. Yeah.
straight out, very like symmetrical with these straight lines. And I just dig what he has going on. It feels like it's both clean and unkempt simultaneously, if that's even possible.
Yeah. No, yeah, I totally buy that. I'm a big fan of the Kevin Pillar beard situation. Obviously, the answer to this question is Charlie Blackmon, but I also want to give a shout out to David Dahl, who'd been such a
Ooh.
smooth baby face throughout most of his life, and it's frustrating too. I've actually experienced this recently as my girlfriend and I are watching the Netflix show Down to Earth with Zac Efron. First of all, fantastic show. I highly recommend everyone check it out. And if you kind of wanted to hate Zac Efron because he was one of those teeny bopper idols on the cover of Tiger Beat, who's been famous since he was 16 and is, just one of those people. This show will make you hate him even more because it also seems like he's a pretty great guy and he can rock a beard. He was one of those smooth face guys and he's just good looking all the time. It's the David Dahl thing too. You're like, all right, he's got the smooth face. He's a good looking guy. He's a great ball player and all this stuff. And then he throws the beard and he rocks that too. And you're like, David, come on, man. You can't have both of those things. So that his first go at the full beard was pulled off. I was going to say not a lot of people realize. Maybe some people do, but your first go at a full beard, it can be tough. It can be a tough one. And
That's pretty good to jump right into it. I just don't like Zac Efron because of his abs. I mean, that's just me.
I'm saying it doesn't help. It doesn't help. However, one thing that does help getting in on all this stuff is placing a little bit of money in the game. Now, unfortunately, we didn't release the odds before this show on who was going to win certain awards. We'll make sure to get that out for you the next time we do the award show. Oh, man, we got to get DraftKings to put odds on the Goaties for next year. We got to find a way to get them to put odds on that. But until then, you can bet on all the sports stuff that you're used to. Still a lot of baseball things going on. Patrick hit you up yesterday with a great pick of the week for the next round. We're always hitting you up with stuff like that, but also you got to check out the DNVR Bets program because they will keep you up to date every single day on how you can add a little bit of cash to your pocket, how you can make your sports watching experience a little bit better, and they can give you the expert advice on where you should, if you are a new user, put your $1 that can win you $100 in the NFL. That's right. Whether or not you're the biggest NFL fan ever, or you just want to head over to the Bets show. And actually, I'll give you the answer right now. They said to take the Rams over the Giants. I don't. That sounds good to me. Take $1, use the promo code DNVR, sign up at DraftKings Sportsbook. You put $1 on the Rams. If they beat, I think the Giants, you win $100. It's like that. That's simple. You don't need to know any of those other things. And then you can learn a little bit more about it going along as we have here. Well, I say we when I'm speaking of myself. I know a lot of the people at the DNVR here have known all about overs and unders and money lines and all this stuff for a long time. I've had a great time learning about all of it, and you probably will too. So use that promo code DNVR, as I said, and you get that promo where you can use $1 and win up to $100 just for picking a winner in this week's football outcomes. You must be 21 or older, Colorado only. Profit boost terms and conditions and eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. And if you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700.
Well, Richard has a suggestion for worst facial hair, but you have to be following along with us live. I'm not going to repeat what he said.
I'm not going to disagree with it either.
But again, this is why you got to join in and watch these live broadcasts. And even if you're watching on YouTube, you can leave your comments and we will see those and comment on that. So let's keep the ball rolling here for end of year awards. Let's talk about the best performance. Now, again, Rockies only ended up winning 26 games this season, which obviously very unfortunate. But there were some standout performances for guys who had, career days and players who, got a little national headlines for what they were able to do. So, Drew, for you, who really stood out and who would get your vote for having, the best performance, maybe a single game, or if you've got something other than that?
Yeah, there's actually a few that came to mind here where I think a lot of people in a terrible season might be going, there weren't very many great performances. There certainly weren't enough. That we can all agree on. But the one that sticks out to me the most, and I've referenced it a couple times, is Kyle Freeland's 8 innings of shutout baseball in San Diego, pitching against not just a very good, but a really hot lineup. Everyone was going. They've been going all year. They're kind of the darlings of Major League Baseball, and for some good reason. And they were in, their house, and he just went out there and shoved, and he pitched mean, which is when he's at his best. That's when Freeland is really bulldogging it out there. And it was in a game where his team was getting shut out, which only adds that extra bit of pressure. You cannot blink. I believe he was matched up that day against Dinelson Lamet, who was throwing like 94-mile-an-hour sliders and shit. It was an amazingly pitched baseball game. I think between the two of them, that was my favorite watch of the season. I love great pitching. I love when guys are hitting their spots and throwing funky stuff, and both pitched phenomenal, but completely different styles of game. And so for me, while again, I think there are some other games, Senzatela, that statistically you could point to, complete game at Coors Field, stuff like that that's probably harder to do. But when you take into account the quality of the opponent, Rockies were still kind of in it at that point. And just the nature of the game, to watch two people at their peak slugging back and forth that's what sports are about, man.
Great selection. I think that's one I think that might get overlooked a little bit because it was 6 innings rather than complete game or anything longer than that. But when you put it in that context against San Diego at that point, where they're now Slam Diego on September 7th, and the fact that it was 0-0 by the time he left the game against Lamet, a guy who, along with Mike Clevenger, those are 1 and 2 pretty much in that Padres rotation, who unfortunately are out of that wild card series. So we'll wait to see what happens tonight if the Padres do advance and play the Dodgers in the next round or not. And again, to think that a key piece like that in the playoffs, Kyle Freeland was able to go toe to toe with him that night, is huge. But for me, I think it is that Senzatela performance, again against Houston Astros, tops in the American League last year. We know they play with a chip on their shoulder. They're sticking around the American League playoffs after taking the first 2 games against the Twins. So we'll now see them matched up against their very much hated Oakland Athletics. We know there's some juice between those two teams, right? They had a little bench clear earlier in the season, and so with they did, and with Senzatela, being able to do that again, it was against Zach Greinke, future Hall of Famer. I think he's another guy.
A really well pitched game. Yeah. Go
back and listen to our podcast where we talked about Yadier Molina being a Hall of Famer, and I've been thinking it for the last couple of years of I think Greinke's kind of getting to that level where
he is.
Because it's so hard to figure out who's a Hall of Famer nowadays when guys just aren't having these long and dominant careers. At one point we had it, and then it was deemed the steroid era, and you go, oh, okay, well, now guys can't use any performance enhancing drugs, when not saying they should, but Mickey Mantle did They're called amphetamines. They're called greenies,
Right.
right? So guys who were able to use that to grind through, and now you're just seeing these numbers tamp down. And Roy Halladay barely scratches 200 wins, and he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. So again, Senzatela against Greinke, future Hall of Famer, just fantastic, matching him in almost every single way. I think he got out the final 13 batters he faced. So, I mean, it wasn't as if he even did it the first time through the lineup before struggles. He did it the second and third time through the lineup, which is even more impressive. So that's why, for me, that is the Rockies' best performance of 2020.
Yeah, I think that's right. I wanted to point out the Freeland one, but I do think that that's right. And if we're taking it over the course of the entire season, I again will point out the consistency of Raimel Tapia. That remains to me a remarkable feat when you look at the history of this franchise and how few people have managed to pull off just regularly getting base hits without slumping for a game or two. He never went 2 consecutive games without a base hit. And that to me is just, it's again, not going to grab headlines, but that's the kind of performance that should turn heads.
Yeah, Chris wants to give MLB an award for this playoff format. We've been talking about it all week. We've been touching on it. 8 games on Wednesday was very exciting. I felt like a pinball there, trying to view all those games, every inning, every out. So appreciate that comment, Chris Cordova, as far as giving MLB award, because it's definitely different, and it definitely, I think, sucks you in right now here in the early part of the postseason before it really gets exciting later on. MLB has done a really good job in that. Daniel also wanted to know, who we've taken in the NLDS, ALDS. I had Twins, Dodgers since the get-go. Now I think I pivoted to Yankees, Dodgers.
Yeah, I think that's probably right.
Rematch of I think it was the 81 World Series. So
Marlins, Rays. No, it's
oh my God, the Florida World Series.
The Florida Series.
And they play in Texas. Oh my God. What's the over-under for amount of toothless streakers that we get?
Right.
During that one. Like you saw that guy in Boston. He snuck into Fenway Park.
Amazing.
We're gonna get a couple of those. We'll find out who the real baseball fans in Florida are. Who makes the drive, through Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana.
Headlines, baby.
Oh, that's great. All right, best acquisition on the 2020 Rockies. Now, we know in the offseason, the Rockies didn't sign any true free agents. They did bring in Tyler Kinley, Jose Mujica. But then right before spring training, a couple teams cut some fat. And the Rockies said, hey, all right, we'll give a non-roster invite to a Chris Owings, a Matt Kemp, Elias Diaz, and we also have Kevin Pillar, Michael Givens, who were acquired at the trade deadline. And Drew, was there somebody – Drew, there was somebody else who the Rockies acquired. We said we'll give him an honorable mention.
They technically acquired Jesus Tinoco. They dequired him. They acquired him. They required.
That deserves an asterisk. Yeah, when you spell Tinoco, spell with an asterisk atop the I, because he was an acquisition. He was in the running. But for me, I think the best and Daniel, well, that is it. Daniel Bard was ended up being the best acquisition I found the first half of the season. By half, I mean 30 days. First half of the season was Matt Kemp, undeniably. And then as the season went on, Matt Kemp looked like a 36-year-old, DH, frankly. Definitely seemed to struggle. So I would give this award to Daniel Bard, especially when you think about going forward. Who do you want to keep around? You want to keep around Kevin Pillar, you want to keep around Elias Diaz, and I think you also want to bring back Daniel Bard for this bullpen. Yeah,
I think that's right, but where I'll take that point into an extended further direction is take Elias Diaz, who, while he hasn't shown it on the field as much yet, and he was certainly nowhere near as valuable to the team in 2020 as Daniel Bard was, he's already under team control. But Bard could go play for somebody else next year for all we know. But it looks like this kid Diaz, he's not a kid, he's older, this guy Diaz, is a piece, is a thing. And we've talked about him as potentially your starting catcher next year, but that they were able to, for basically nothing, bring this guy into the organization, I think, and keep him around for. So, you could argue Kevin Pillar had a great finish to the year. And if the Rockies had been in it, we'd be talking about Kevin Pillar as the best acquisition. If they win that game where he hits the grand slam, a few other things go their way. He had some massive hits for this team. He could have been a real second half hero. Of course, the team around him just didn't do all those things. And now who knows whether or not he'll be there next year. So I'm going to go Diaz because I've got faith and a certain amount of trust. Like there's no risk there that he's going to bring value to this team in the future. Some of these other guys may not. So I also do think in the long term, like Givens, it may be interesting to like look back on this and be like, actually, the best acquisition was Michael Givens. We just didn't know it at the time, and it would certainly feel weird to say that right now. But if he's great for them next year, he will have been.
Yeah, well, you'll find this interesting because I know I did. MLB released a couple of days ago specifics on the Rookie of the Year voting and how you're deemed a Rookie of the Year. And previously, the rule was something along the lines of if you were a pitcher, you had 50 innings pitched or more. For hitters, I think the number was 130 plate appearances or more, or you were a part of the roster for 45 days before September. And so they took away that September caveat. And ultimately there are a couple guys, Brian Hayes of the Pirates, one of them, that if he can get votes because he only had about like 75 or so plate appearances, but was absolutely dominant. I think he even had like 1.5 wins above replacement in like the 3 weeks he played. He can get a Rookie of the Year award vote this year and still be deemed a rookie next year.
Wow.
How about that?
That's
so
cool.
I think, right. And that's just never going to happen because again, you have guys, even if you just have 300 at bats, you're going to go, well, this guy wasn't as good in 300 at bats as you were in 75, but next year you'll be a rookie. So we're not even going to consider you now.
But everyone's a small sample this year.
Yeah. Brian Hayes, son of Charlie Hayes, is very much a consideration for the Rookie of the Year award. So I bring that up because I think Michael Givens is, I know Jeff Bridich and Dick Monfort are going to talk about, especially if they re-sign Kevin Pillar too. They're going to say, hey, we acquired players this off season. They're going to use Givens and Pillar as, reason 1 and 2. Like, hey, look, we did things before the off season, so we should get credit for that. And I think in a way, they should. Richard also pointing out that Owings definitely looked really good before he got injured. I think we're going to see him back next year.
Yeah, it makes sense as organizational depth too, as you're kind of, especially as you're waiting on Brendan Rodgers to answer that question or not. So yeah, that's a good call.
Yeah. Next award for the 2020 Rockies, breakout player. Now you could go a few different ways here. Is this just a guy who surprised you, a guy who stepped up, who was just, a guy who wasn't one of the stars and elite players? Is he someone who's more of a household name? You could go a few different ways on this. For me, I'm just going to take it as, we did at the beginning of the season. We've talked about it a whole bunch, the definitive 5, the guys who outside of the star players of the Rockies, who's going to be most important to step up. And, we talked about it, and Drew, you wrote the article. Go back and read it. It's still applicable now in October as it was back when it was written in July. Antonio Senzatela was that guy for the Rockies. He broke out. He stepped up from a guy who was sent down to the minors last year, was arguably a number 5 starter that was going to maybe have to win a job if all things lined up with Peter Lambert being healthy and some other options like Chichi Gonzalez and Jeff Hoffman getting their act together. And you say, maybe Senzatela is left out in the cold and he's your long reliever out in the bullpen. But he goes from that number 5 slot to easily a number 3 starter with potential next year to almost pair up with Marquez as these, 1 and 2, and even in Freeland being also a number 2 type starter. So for me, it was Senzatela who really broke the mold and said, whoa, this guy is no longer someone who has to fight for his spot on the roster. He is definitively a guy that needs to be in this rotation and can be relied upon on a start every 5 days.
Yep. Apologies to Raimel Tapia, Josh Fuentes, Yency Almonte, who were all, it's where you give the speech, to all the nominees in the category. Just honored to be among your company, but Cenzatello runs away with that one pretty comfortably.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that takes care of most of our serious ones. Before we get we have any fun, I think pretty much all of the comments that were left in our YouTube video. Somebody wants to know about the jazziest cleats, best dugout cheerleader. I don't follow too many guys on Instagram, Drew. Do you know anybody who had some good swag?
I know Cargo always used to have the best swag, and it was always easy to spot. I don't know who's got Walters usually has some pretty great swag. So I'm probably by default gonna go Walters. I'd have to go back and double check though. That's one of those things I'm not always the best at paying attention to.
Yeah, underrated player, which we kind of covered, and I think that takes us to
we didn't say best dugout cheerleader is probably Daniel Murphy, by the way. Not that you want to go out there and get, but he's the guy who, when we're sitting up there in the press box and you hear someone constantly yelling, "Atta babe, that's your pitch. You got him." All that stuff, it's Daniel Murphy like 70% of the time. And in the summer camp, he was talking during plays and having fun with the guys and doing that. And so he's a pretty good towel waver and not an especially great first baseman.
But hey, we're not giving out awards for best first baseman because that would go to Josh Fuentes.
Right.
If it was. All right. So let's have some fun. We did best facial hair. How about head hair? If you're just talking about hair, I mean, you just say
best
hair
on the head. Again, I feel like this is maybe it's not a two-man race. I forgot about a couple. Brendan Rodgers got a nice head of hair.
He's got a lot of lettuce, as they say, as the kids like to say.
Mentioned Dahl earlier. His hair situation very tight, very well put together. But again, I feel like this is a two-man race between Charlie Blackmon and Raimel Tapia. And it's just do you which type of wild do you prefer? I'm a Tapia man. It's no secret. You got to give him this one. You got to give him the best hair out there, rocking the dreads. He's had them in different styles, different dyes, but always expressive and joyous to look at.
Yeah, Matt Kemp also had some smaller dreadlocks going. I think you got to give him a shout out. John Gray, always, it's not as flowy as it used to be now that he's got a little bit of a mohawk. That was a good one. Fuentes, he keeps it tight on the sides and a little bit longer on the top and the back. So got to give
Gray was more cool, like Thor look. I would have given Gray like when he's got the longer hair and the bigger beard, but when he goes like clean cut like he was in his Okie days, I'm like, John, come on, who are you trying to impress?
Now, if this was the best impersonation of a young Chris Iannetta, I would go Garrett Hampson. But alas, I was torn a little bit too, and then it's actually I think it's more of a slam dunk than we think. It is Raimel Tapia. I mean, the fact that he can't keep the helmet on his head, he tries. You see him doing it. You see him going to push it down.
Going too fast.
He's and with the blonde tips at the end. I mean, he really is. A good 3 weeks away at the beginning of next season from, being featured on ESPN, MLB Network a lot more frequently. And I think people will really start to realize because after Andrew McCutchen cut off, his beautiful locks, who else is there out there, right? I think Brendan Rodgers is also ready to take his hair game to the next level because you gotta be able to back it up. Like you have to perform on the field to get some notice for your hair. Even when Bryce Harper trims his hair, it's amazing because it's Bryce Harper. Right. So I think you have to have that kind of swagger. And I think,
Bryce Harper has phenomenal hair.
He's great. He's great. and I think Tapia's game took a step forward, this year. And even if he just comes back on the field with the exact same hair as he did last year, I think that in and of itself will take his hair to the next level.
100%.
I think his hair is a safer bet to have a better season than next year. I think pitching might adjust to him at the plate, but his hair will definitely have a very good 2020 season.
Right. Put that in your DraftKings sports.
Boom. Best entrance music. Now we're going to go with walk-up, but best just entrance
music. Yeah.
Music. When you come into the game, either you're coming to the plate, going to the bullpen. Again, this would be like obviously Charlie Blackmon, but you're not tuning into the DNVR Rockies podcast to just hear what you already know. You want to hear, he's like an all-time, he's like honorary. You're like,
at some point he's won like the Lifetime Achievement Award already, right? The Cecil B. DeMille Award for best entrance music, and it's like you can't just keep winning it. They should basically retire the National League Gold Glove until Nolan Arenado retires, right? Like what?
Bingo.
Right. So yes, Charlie. But other than that, best entrance music.
For me, it would be Daniel Bard's Pearl Jam Alive, because when you hear it every time you go, oh yeah, Daniel Bard is still alive. It took him 7 years to get back to the majors, but he's still alive. And you're like, wow, what a great sense of humor. You immediately know the story behind it. It ties in with all of that. And you go, man, that doesn't get old. Neither does Charlie Blackmon's song, Your Love.
That's right.
Never gets old. But I gotta give the 2020 Rockies award to Daniel Bard's Alive by the greatest Cubs fan alive, Eddie Vedder and Pearl Jam.
I know, right? I know. So yeah, I love that pick. I love that pick because the first time I heard him come out to that, I was like, that's perfection. For thematic reasons, it could walk away with this award. For me, just the best music that is played when a guy's walking up this year. First of all, I really appreciated Chris Owings going with like the biggest pop hit of the summer, but still The Weeknd's Blinding Lights is a dope song, and there's a reason why it was the biggest pop hit. And I usually don't say that about whatever the song of the summer is.
Wasn't it the WrestleMania song, Drew?
Was it?
I think it may have been.
I think you're right. I think it may have. I mean, it was it was everywhere.
And it always comes back.
It always comes back to wrestling. But I'm a big Weeknd fan as well. So got to give a shout out there. But I actually, because it was a piece of music he turned me on to, because I'm not a big Harry Styles fan. And actually it was the girlfriend who had to be like, so now Zac Efron and Harry Styles I've had to come out in favor of on this podcast. And I haven't mentioned that I've come around on the Jonas Brothers as well. But the Tony Wolters walk-up music, Watermelon Sugar from Harry Styles, that song is actually just dope. Like, it's just really smooth. It's fly. It's a good piece of music. And every time he came up to, like, it had that groove to it. Like, you feel like good things are going to happen. They didn't for the most part when Tony Wolters came to the plate, but I felt like good things were going to happen. It's one you start singing every time he comes up. You just start going right into it. So I was like, I'm digging on Wolters this year.
Good summer jam. Yeah, I mean, Watermelon Sugar. Like it makes you think of summertime and the never-ending summer at Coors Field, and you hear it, and it would have been nice if it had continued into autumn and you still heard it. But yeah, that good pick. I like that one. Yeah. Well. Since we don't have any more suggestions out there, our last one that I know of, unless we think of anything on the fly, not to pull back the fourth wall here, but the best, and maybe this is fitting, this is our last one, the best cardboard cutout. So a lot of teams did a lot of interesting things. I know the guys over at the DNVR Broncos covered the fact that last week for the first game at Mile High Empower Field at Mile High Stadium of Denver, Mile High City, 5280 Field, City, State, Centennial State. I forgot one of the other branding.
Of
Breck Brew Emporium. But at Mile High, they had all of the characters that lived at South Park there getting
Right.
ready for the pandemic episode. I have not yet watched that. I'm very much looking forward. I
Yeah.
feel like that's appointment viewing. You have to watch that. So they had cardboard cutouts of all the characters, including a gigantic one for Satan, and they had a Hanky Poo and Mr. Hanky Poo, excuse me.
Mr.
Gotta be respectful.
Christmas.
But best cardboard cutout is that guy. I can't remember his name. Who was the one that had the glove on his head?
Yeah, the guy with the glove on his head.
Was that Kevin Ritz? I think it was Kevin Ritz.
I think it was, yeah. I'm pretty sure. Original Rocky. Isn't Kevin Ritz an OG?
I believe so. I know he was at least on 94.
Yeah,
I think he was.
The glove on his head. I love the way they would randomly like sparse them apart. You know, you'd see like a couple that it would be like there'd be like there'd start to emerge a theme. You're like, oh, okay, Brad Hopp's kind of over there by Garrett Atkins and Seth Smith. It's like, oh, there's a 2007 theme running here, and then like right in front of them, it's like Larry Walker and EY and Todd Helton. You're like, oh, okay, now you guys are running. So I would always love when there would be like a grouping of them. This happened a couple of times. I wish I could remember exactly who it was, but there'd be like the mega stars. There was one, I think it was the first series, and it was like Cargo, Walker, Helton, Bichette, Castilla.
That was great.
And then, but like right behind them, there was, and then like a whole bunch of others like EY, Galarraga, like they were all there, and then just stuck in the middle. It was like Kevin Ritz or whatever. Yeah. It was, there was like one where it was like Clint Marmus, where you're like, we love you, Clint.
Yeah, it would be interesting to know like how they came up with that, because you're right. That's how it was, at least at first. And Helton was on the left side. He was on like the first base side originally. Right. So it was like Larry Walker and Todd Helton had the two seats closest to home plate. But you're right. Helton was on that other side. Shout out to Dinger. Dinger was of course. So who was your official one? So me, it was Kevin Ritz with the glove on his head. If you got to pick one.
Mine's whoever was the odd man out in that weird cat, because all I could think of
7-way tie.
How did Clint Barmas get those tickets? Like, how did you get to that party? Right? Like, I want to get into that party where you're like, oh yeah. It was just Todd Helton, Larry Walker, Vinny Castilla, Carlos Gonzalez.
Did they have a Clint Hurdle one? I don't actually remember seeing one.
I don't remember seeing Clint Hurdle. I don't remember seeing any old managers, come to think of it. Well, Walt Weiss was probably there in his.
I saw the Jim Leland one. It wasn't behind home plate. It was actually in the dugout, like on that walkway to the dugout. It had smoking a cigarette. So I mean, it doesn't count, I guess, technically.
Jim Leland.
Spilly. Spilly. They moved him around. I thought that was really cool. And my other favorite cardboard cutout was Johan Flond. It wasn't at the stadium. It was actually, you can't see it. It's just off camera. I have one right over here. So for me, that was my personal one. Wasn't ever at Coors Field, but that was also in the running for me. My cardboard Johan Flond.
Absolutely fantastic. Oh man, well that was fun. I love giving out random awards and these weren't even actual awards.
Yeah, thankfully they didn't come with any kind of gift cards. Although maybe I'm sure Kyle Freeland would appreciate a $20 gift card to the farmhouse.
Right. I just saw a couple on Twitter real quick. We missed another one from Tim. Best bat flip. Trevor Story has a bat flip now. He started doing that thing of leaving his hands out, kind of a extra. Yeah, Trevor Story's got a bat flip thing going on.
Best uniform? What do you like best uniform? Do you like the black sleeveless?
Yeah, and that's probably because that's what they wore in 07 during the blackout run to the World Series. But black sleeveless vests are my favorite Rockies unit. As much as I love the purple stuff too, like when they come out in those black sleeveless, let's go. It's game time now.
We also had best human someone put out there. I mean, there's too many. There's too many to name, to be honest.
Pretty great humans. I did like underrated player most likely to be a stud playing somewhere else from Richard here.
So should we read the entire roster in alphabetical order or it's interesting you bring that up, Drew?
Yeah, I was gonna say that, I'm working on a little something like that. I've plugged it before, I'm plugging it again because it's getting long, and the evidence I continue to accrue is pretty amazing, and it's going to speak to that in terms of DJ LeMahieu, who was a massively underrated player here and is now getting a ton of credit for it somewhere else. And I think it could literally, as Patrick said, apply to just about everyone on the roster, especially when you really start diving into some of this stuff. So, but the other part of your question about who's the player who'd most benefit from robo-umps is Raimel Tapia. And I say that with overwhelming confidence, especially from this last season. But for a guy who you're really trying not to get to extend his strike zone and who doesn't hit for much pop, every single time he has that one that's called an inch or two low on him it's just brutal. Right? It's absolutely brutal for his game, for what he does. And he had a lot of them and has. He's not a guy who gets the benefit of the doubt.
That's awesome. This was fun for sure.
Well, yeah, we'll make this a more regular thing. We'll give off-season awards, and hopefully there will be off-season things to have reported on. So stick with us during that. Well, again, we're not quite even technically to the off-season is for the Rockies, but we'll be talking a little bit more about the playoff baseball. We're going to dive into that DJ LeMahieu data next week as well. So make sure that you're subscribed to the DNVR.com so you don't miss the article, that you're there for all that written content. Plus, you get discounts on shirts, hats, masks, all kinds of fantastic stuff, including a bigger beer. I always do that one, a bigger bar when you come down to the beer. And so make sure that you are a member. You're following us on social media at Drew Creasman, at Patrick D. Lyons, at DNVR_Rockies. You're continuing to remain absolutely awesome out there. Give yourself an award for sticking through this entire podcast. We will remain absolutely Patrick Lyons and Drew Creasman in here. And until next time, we will see you at the ballpark.